Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 12, Text 11. Sarvatmanyachute sarve Tivraugham bhaktim udahan Dadarshatmani bhuteshu tam eva stitam vibhum Sarvatmanyachute sarve Tivraugham bhaktim udhavan Dadarshayatmani bhuteshu tam eva vastitam vibhum. Dhruva Maharaj rendered devotional service unto the Supreme, the reservoir of everything, with unrelenting force. Tivra Ogham, unrelenting force. While carrying out his devotional service to the Lord, he could see that everything is situated in him only, and that he is situated in all living entities. The Lord is called Achyuta because he never fails in his prime duty to give protection to his devotees. Purport. Not only did Dhruva Maharaj perform many sacrifices, but he carried on his transcendental occupation of engagement in devotional service of the Lord. The ordinary karmis who want to enjoy the results of fruitive activities are concerned only with sacrifices and ritualistic ceremonies as enjoined in the Vedic Shastras. Although Dhruva Maharaj performed many sacrifices in order to be an exemplary king, he was constantly engaged in devotional service. The Lord always protects his surrendered devotee. A devotee can see that the Lord is situated in everyone's heart, as stated in the Bhagavad Gita, Ishvara Sarva Bhutanam Hriday Shirjuna Tishtati. Ordinary persons cannot understand how the Supreme Lord is situated in everyone's heart, but a devotee can actually see him. Not only can the devotee see him outwardly, but he can see with spiritual vision that everything is resting in the Supreme Personality of Godhead as described in the Bhagavad Gita. Matstani Sarvabhutani. That is the vision of the Mahabhagavata. He sees everything others see, but instead of seeing merely the trees, mountains, cities, and sky, he sees only his worshipable Supreme Personality of Godhead in everything, because everything is resting in him only. This is the vision of a Mahabhagavata, saying it twice, now a third time. In summary, a Mahabhagavata, a highly elevated pure devotee, sees the Lord everywhere, as well as within the heart of everyone. This is possible for devotees who have developed elevated devotional service to the Lord, as stated in the Brahma Samhita 5:38. Premanjana charita bhakti vilochanena. Only those who have smeared their eyes with the ointment of love of Godhead can see everywhere the Supreme Lord face to face, semicolon. It is not possible by imagination or so-called meditation. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Iti Namane Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desatarine Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktarinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Yesterday's verse was the first of a series. Yesterday's verse was preceded by getting blessings from Kuvera because to punish the murderers of his brother, he went to the kingdom of the Yakshas and started slaughtering Yakshas left and right. And his grandfather, Swayambhuva, who came and said, "Stop. This is not right. All should not be punished for what the actions of one." And so he stopped. Just like that. And Swayambhuva departed and Kuvera appeared, the leader of the Yakshas, honored his submission to his grandfather and offered benediction. And rather than asking for something material, he asked for spiritual, always with his mind always fixed in the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Kuvera left, and then he returned back to his palace, and the first verse, yesterday's verse, was the yagyas that he performed. And we discussed that a little bit. Commonly, yagyas implies karmakanda. Karmakanda implies fruitive activity that's authorized by the Vedas, fruitive activity, whereby necessities of, or the needs, the wants of human beings can be fulfilled, but in an orderly fashion, in a theistic fashion, in a elevation of consciousness fashion, as opposed to the way of life that theism is missing. And then it becomes animal life, unregulated, unrestricted pursuit of desire, that desire, the other desire. Maybe in a organized fashion, maybe in a this or that, but the atheism model is replaced by the theism model. And so human society has theism, that is, fulfillment of desires and necessities, whether necessities are just a desire, there's a procedure. And acknowledging the Veda, the one Veda, this is acknowledging the Supreme. So the purpose of the Vedas, plural, is to know Krishna. So he, A and B, he observed the rituals and B with the purpose of satisfying Vishnu. It was fixed. That was what we heard yesterday. It's in the yesterday's verse and purport. So in today's verse, he's setting an example because not everybody is a pure devotee like him. But he is a king, so he's setting an example. And then those in his kingdom that are not pure devotees like him can see his example. And then at least their wants and their desires can be fulfilled by these various yagyas. So we also discussed the process of perfection for Satya Yuga is dhyayate, meditation. So he didn't just because he's the a pure devotee go off and do meditation and people didn't see him. They saw him. He led them in the acts of sacrifice, which are particularly recommended for another age besides the present Satya Yuga. But nonetheless, he did. Just set an example, and he set an example. So now we're hearing this verse repeated. He's in Mahabhagavata. Along with the yagyas, he did his regulative devotional service. Now he's a pure devotee, so it doesn't the asset or the assistance of Vitis is not required for him because he's on the topmost platform. But he's the king, so he's showing by example he engaged in regular devotional service. Samaimana, Krishna, Padaravindayo, etc. He engaged in deity worship, for example. Engaged in deity worship. And other forms or expressions of devotional service. As we know, there's 9, and we did them all, particularly the hearing and the worshiping and the remembrance of, he did them all perfectly, setting an example. And the the additional point that's made, that's repeated several times in the purport, is what his subjective experience was, and on the one hand, and on the other hand. So the Upanishads have teachings. He's within everything and he's outside of everything. It's similarly mentioned in Bhagavad, behold my mystic opulence. So it's confusing or it's explicitly contradictory. We've discussed this. I remember sitting here discussing this point exactly. We can be in the room or we can be outside the room. We can't be both in the room and outside the room because that's our limitation. But Krishna can be within everything and outside of everything simultaneously. No problem. Behold my mystic opulence. And the Mahabhagavata, repeated 3 times, is able to experience, subjectively experience, situated within everyone and everything. So he's within, and he's not within. And the not within, there's different ways of understanding he's within. One is by his Paramatma feature. Another is by his energetic expansion feature. That is to say, what is there that exists, whatever there is that exists, it's his energy, spiritual or material. Just do the material. Whatever that exists in the material creation, that's his energy. So in that sense, he's within everything because it's his energy. And you can't think of something that exists that's not Krishna's energy. Krishna's manifest everywhere by the agency of his energy. He's manifest everywhere as his external or partial manifestation of Paramatma. So he's within everything and he is outside of everything simultaneously because he who is the source is it's the oneness and difference principle. Everything is one with him and everything is different from him because everything can't be the source. There's one source. So there's a oneness and there's a difference between the source of everything and everything. There's a oneness and difference. And that's a nice concept. And then a Mahabhagavata is one that experiences it. They perceive it at all times. It might seem like circuit overload to perceive that at all times. Like, see Krishna within and see Krishna outside at all times. And everywhere. He's everywhere, manifest. Like, when artists try to depict seeing Paramatma everywhere, how do you depict that? Looks like all these sparks here and there and everywhere, and he's everywhere. He's everywhere. There isn't somewhere where he isn't. So the artist may depict any form of life within his Paramatma, but then you can't keep going. Within every atom, there's Paramatma. How's an artist going to depict that? They'll just go to each living entity. But beyond that, there's so all pervasive, all pervasive. So he's within everything and he's outside of everything at the same time. So it's inconceivable. It's mind-boggling. It's contradictory. And it's the experience of Mahabhagavata. How is that made possible? How does one become a Mahabhagavata and become thus eligible or entitled or having the capacity, the credential to have this experience? The medium is devotional service, and the standard of devotional service is the prema standard of the 9 stages. So we're doing some devotional service. We may not have that experience that the Mahabhagavata has. So the Mahabhagavata, that verse from the Brahma Samhita, because of prema. And they don't go to a cosmetic store and ask for one nice jar of prema and smear it on their eyes. It's not something material, obviously. Then how does it arise? By stages of unfolding of bhakti. When bhakti becomes fully mature, that's the prema stage. And fully mature prema stage has this experience. The performer of perfect devotional service has this experience. Seems far away, like perfect. Who's perfect? We become perfect. We're imperfect beings. Can we become perfect? And it's not exactly, if you look at it from the lens of doership, it's not something you can do. So you just like, okay, I can't do it. However, it's not something that you do, it's something that's bestowed. Bestowed means an unfolding of a stage of something that's given to you, and then you cultivate that which is given to you with meaningful love. Make your offerings and mantra chantings and scripture reading and other activities of devotional service, and do with real purpose of satisfying the Supreme. It's a small thing, and it's a big thing. It's a difference. That demarcates the line between spiritual and material. The behavior itself is not what can fulfill, or giving lip service to something those are nice. We do those things, but it's not sufficient. Bhakti, the intention to please Krishna, is the operative principle, and that's sufficient at whatever stage one is in. And you try, you strive to maintain that standard of attentiveness or presence with your activities of devotional service, each one, with faith that by that very means, pure, the two things, purification and awakening, forgetfulness is washed away and remembrance becomes awakened. Jeev Jago, Jeev Jago, Gora Chandra Bole. Therefore, the importance of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So here we are in Canto 4, and the whole of Srimad Bhagavatam unfolds with different narrations. In this case, it's a narration about somebody that wasn't pure, that became pure. Now, what he did to become pure was beyond our capacity to do. The austerities of young Dhruva, beyond our capacity, way beyond our capacity. We wouldn't survive. We could. But the principle, aside from the extremity, and because it has something to do with the age and so forth and so on, and the speed with which he attained the mercy of Lord Vishnu, 6 months. But it's the principle of purification, and it was his submission to the personality of Godhead, and that was made possible by Narada Muni. Of course, he had a very strong desire, but a materially motivated, strong desire to get what he wanted. But he had faith in Narada. Anyway, so the combination of his effort and mercy brought the transformation. And now he's living the mature adult life of that which he didn't have was washed away. That is, the wanting of the kingdom desire was washed away. But now here he is with the kingdom and doing pure devotional service according to the indication of Lord Vishnu. That's what he wanted.
So that's what he did. And this is how he did it, or what it looked like, and what he was experiencing. So back to the Mahabhagavata phrase, this one more time. I'll just read a little bit. It's very nice. Ordinary persons cannot understand how the Supreme Lord is situated in everyone's heart, but the devotee can actually see him. Not only can the devotee see him outwardly, but he can see with spiritual vision that everything is resting in the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is the vision of the Mahabhagavata. He sees everything others see, but instead of seeing merely the trees, mountains, cities, or sky, he sees only his worshipable Supreme Personality of Godhead in everything, because everything is resting in him only. So it's a philosophical statement, but more than a philosophical statement. It's the subjective experience. It's the conscious experience, unique for the Mahabhagavata. And that, again, the word Bhagavata is in relation to Bhagavan, the person Bhagavata, the book Bhagavata, Bhagavan, in relation to Bhagavan. So it's being packed up or very focused upon Bhagavan. So that's the book and that's the person. And both the book and the person are required in order to reveal Bhagavan. Both are very merciful manifestations of Bhagavan, which is in relation to Bhagavan, is the Bhagavata. So we're trying to follow. In the discussion.
This in connection with this topic about the Mahabharata vision. So one thing that I was thinking, like in our stage, there's not a subjective experience, but there's a confidence that when we hear from the Shastra,
Yeah.
so when I see a living entity, there is no doubt then when I can say that, oh, Krishna is in this living entity's heart, or if I see
Yeah.
things around me,
Yeah.
I see these things in connection to Krishna, and they are Krishna's energies.
Yes.
So there's no doubt, there's a confidence.
Yes.
And it's not a subjective experience, but there's also not like it's nothing. It's like based upon the Shastras and trusting that we live or cultivate that life or that vision of trying to see everything is in connection with Krishna.
Yeah.
So that's the cultivation stage of, you know.
Yeah. That's yes. I'm agreeing with everything you said. And then what? So then we continue with that faith. And there is a prediction. One could say an expectation, but one more rightly could just say there's a prediction. There's that matures. That seed of faith, and then the sadhana, that's the cultivation of that seed of faith, matures. And same as our discussion yesterday, however long that takes. And for some it's shorter, some it's longer, it's however long it takes. Seeds fructify when cultivated properly. So our focus goes to proper cultivation and continuing with faith. Subjectively, I was just listening to Prabhupada explaining this bhakti process is so nice. We don't need someone to evaluate. We can evaluate it ourselves. And his statement was, when the allure, the affinity for rajas and tamas subsides, that's an indication that the bhakti,
I'm sorry.
the bhakti process is working. We're doing it properly.
FM radio, NOAA radio,
Then-
Bluetooth,
then
Oxen.
Alternatively, if if the cesspool is rising, then you're not advancing nicely. If the affinity for passion, lust, and greed are increasing, then you're not applying yourself properly. You're not doing well in the application process. So that when there's still residual influences from past, etc., that's not an indication that the bhakti process is wrong or that you're applying yourself wrongly. It's incidental. But overall, that's an evaluation process, a self-evaluation process. Yeah. You want to add? Yeah.
Well, now circling back to the question that I asked the first evening about this name of Krishna being Achyuta and how that was being elaborated in that verse about hearing anew. Uh, and I was just like, even in today's verse, also the word Achyuta came, and I was just kind of bringing this, circling back to this confidence that chanting and calling out to Krishna's name, focusing on that Krishna is infallible, or he's always present. So again, it's not something, a vision. It's not something I have an experience of, but a confidence in that's the Lord I'm calling, and that's who He is.
This is
So
that same question again.
yes. So it's circling back to the same thing, that that's the cultivation of confidence, or reposing one's confidence, not necessarily that that's what one's experience, but it's a confidence,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that's what when we
Yeah,
practice.
Yes. Others?
Yeah.
You got the microphone.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So I hope this is not a how-to question, but sometimes when you're doing devotional service, you may start off with the intention, like this is service to Krishna, I want to please him. But sometimes you get caught up in the act of doing the service, like just like doing it, and you kind of forget, like I guess you kind of forget the purpose, and you just
Yes.
get into doing it. So how do you maintain that intention like throughout your service?
It is a how-to question, but I'll answer it in a different way. The whole of one of the 6 sandarbhas is Priti Sandarbha, and the focus is the loving quality with which you engage. And love is resting on a person. So a key step is mindfulness of the person. I'll give a little example. There's a certain devotee I know, and he likes kirtan, and he struggles with japa. Sound familiar? And you know, during a japa retreat, he was making his best effort to, receive all of the preparatory talks and so forth, and then apply himself to attentive japa instead of distracted japa. And I asked him, what seemed to work for you best? And he gave a simple answer. He said, just being present. Now, the being present can have more or less of a personal flair to it or dimension to it. So the more it's personal, the more the door to Kriti opens, because you're doing something not to get something, but you do something for another person, and that feeling of doing so, that's a cultivation, because we're prone to do something to get something. We're prone to fruitive work, even and import that fruitive work tendency in the realm of devotion service. Now, back to your question, you're dedicating yourself to do some service, and the purpose is because this is for the pleasure of Krishna, and you get so absorbed in the doing of the service that you forget for whom it's being done. And your question is, how do you keep track of for whom you're doing it while you're in the middle of doing it? So it's personalism or love. So a Bhagavad Gita verse that says the same thing. Desham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam. And then dadami bodhi yogam. So the intelligence to direct the mind and attention to the purpose for which an activity of devotional service is being done, that intelligence is given. But the intelligence is not just superlative to the mind. It's superlative to the mind, but it stays. It doesn't waver. It's fixed on a person and love. It's like, and then another, say, relationship of mother to child, and the affinity of mother to child is quite natural. So whatever might be going on with the mother and the duties of the mother in the house and the duties of the mother in relation to the child, because of the affection for the child, it stays fixed because of the affection for the child. Whatever's going on, the feeding of the child, the cleaning of the child, or the something, instructing of the child, or scolding of the child, or something. It's the affection. Priti. So the answer to your question is cultivate the purposefulness, the dimension of it's the service that you're undertaking today, or now. There's a purpose, and otherwise it's useless. We don't need it, because it's one thing. And so I'm not there yet, but I'm doing the sadhana to get there. And so there's devotional service. I have some faith in devotional service. Back to her question, or the flavor of her question. I have confidence it's going to take me to where I want to go. So how do you become attached to someone? You serve the someone. And then attachment, presuming that someone is a worthy object, then attachment to that someone comes easy. And then there's something from the other side, the object side, seeing the intention of the servant or the one who's rendering the service. There's some further extending because of that affection. My thought is going to pause, because my thought is going to a little passage from Vishaka's book, 5 years, 11 months, and the devotees are together. I forget if it was in Delhi or Calcutta. And it was one of those, there was a big festival going on. And so there was a zillion devotees, and there's a men's ashram and there's a ladies' ashram. And Jamuna became ill, so she wasn't present at the classes. Prabhupada noted that she wasn't present at the classes. So one time he went right into the ladies' ashram, and because he heard that she's not well, he found her in a closet, 6 foot by 4 foot closet, so she would infect others with her illness. And Vishaka was there to just, see how she was doing. And all of a sudden, Jamuna flipped over and paid obeisances. And she turned. So Vishaka turned and saw Prabhupada standing there. The ashram was empty, except Jamuna in the closet. So Prabhupada wasn't acting in improper way. He didn't say what he asked before he entered the ashram, but he went right into the ladies' ashram, stood at the door of the closet, and said, "Jamuna, are you well?" I mean, he knew she wasn't. And her reply was, "I'm always thinking of you, Srila Prabhupada." That was her reply. And Prabhupada replied, "And I'm always thinking of you." It's the reciprocation, because that was her heart, and Prabhupada knew it, and so he went to, not everybody that got ill got that kind of reciprocation from Prabhupada, but she loved him in such a way, and he loved her like a daughter loves a son. Excuse me, the daughter loves a father. He loved her that way, and then told her, "You have to get out of this closet. You need air, and I'll make an arrangement." So he, made an arrangement so she could get well. But not like she couldn't get well unless Prabhupada had made that arrangement. But the loving exchange was what it was, because that's the way in which she rendered her service to the lovable object. So it's reciprocation is my point. Anything else?
Because this is on the topic of compassion. In this verse also we see Dhruva Maharaj doing all these sacrifices for the benefit of the citizens.
Yeah.
And everywhere in Bhagavatam, we see this compassion and Srila Prabhupada's compassion. I mean, it is also how to question, but like how does one develop that
How does one
compassion,
develop that?
that compassion? And
You mean the Dhruva capacity? Thinking of the welfare of others
welfare of
capacity?
others. Yes, Maharaj.
How do you fall off a log? It's quite natural. It's training, but it's also natural. That is to say, a Kshatriya wants to protect. He was Kshatriya spirited from childhood, and now he's in adulthood and trained. And, so his capacity was not our capacity. Our capacity is tiny, but the principle isn't how do you develop his capacity. The question is, how do you develop that interest in the welfare of others? It's just quite natural. Supposing somebody's not a Kshatriya, supposing, Prabhupada would speak about this because it happened in New York. and he knew about it, so he made comment from time to time. Somebody was beating up on somebody on a street in Queens, and people just passed by because they didn't want to get hassled by somebody who was brutalizing another person in a public sidewalk. They just walked right by. And it made the news. That's how deteriorated character has become out of fear or whatever. But one become dullness or ignorance takes away those finer sentiments, and the finer sentiments are innate. They're quite natural. It's like falling off a log. It's quite natural to have sentiments for the welfare of others, and it's enhanced by Krishna consciousness. Bhaktisiddhanta expressed, I'm not going to say it exactly as he said it, but something to the effect that the compassion for another living entity is just a subset of love of God. As much as there's love of God, there's going to be compassion for other living entities, because living entities are his parts and parcels. So how can one have love for God without the compassion for living entities that are suffering in the world? And then what are you going to do about it? Then you may want to misdirect it at just do philanthropic work, feed people, or something, and that's it. It stops there. So, revive their Krishna consciousness. Anyway, so then your question is, where does that tendency, capacity to have care for others and expanded as Dhruva? It's a natural sentiment, as love of God is a natural sentiment. So it's byproduct of. The sun and the rays of the sun are both illumination and illuminating.
Maharaja, what is the consequence of being able to see the Supreme Lord in everything and in everyone?
What's the consequence?
Yes.
You become a Mahabhagavata.
To take it one step further, when you become a Mahabhagavata, what's the consequence of that?
Well, you engage as a Mahabhagavata engages. You don't do anything else but. Ahaitokya pratyata. It's causeless, uninterrupted life. That's the consequence. Life of pure devotion. And how that's going to look like depends. This pure devotee, that pure devotee, it'll look a little differently, but the principle is the consequence. That's your question. Unalloyed service in any circumstance that Krishna brings before you. Your mind doesn't go away to a problem, or that stays with the root, Krishna's loving service. Priti in all circumstances of life. Something else? Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai.
Jai.
Jai.